Hello, this is Catherine Blevins. I am doing an interview with Kristine Streeter for Education 639. Kristine, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Kristine Streeter, and I am the Vice President of HR in charge of mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, and outsourcing, or as we like to call it, MATO, at Hewlett-Packard, one of the largest technology companies in the world.
Well, Kristine, I have a couple questions I wanted to ask you regarding technology and specifically educational technology. But to start with, I wanted to ask, how many years have you been a professional in the field of technology?
So I have been at Hewlett-Packard for the past 20 years. Part of that was in administration and finance. It's really been the last 15 years that I've been involved in our internal information technology group, supporting our human capital management systems. And at HP, all of that is internally managed, and with a population of upwards of 300,000 employees, there's a lot of data and technology infrastructure that's required to support that data collection and processing.
Great. I would like you to describe how you would identify current trends and issues in the field of technology.
Sure. So I think there's a couple main themes that have been coming up in technology, and a lot of people will refer this to the new style of IT. And when you think about some of the advancements that have come up over the last, just 5 years, you don't even have to go back 10 years, it is mobile. So people do not want to be connected to a desktop. They do not want to have to be connected to a hard drive. So you've got mobility, and with mobility, then you get the cloud. And a lot of people struggle with what the cloud means, but basically it just means that you can access your data, your applications, your capabilities through Wi-Fi, through connections that are not rooted in being connected to a hard drive. There's still a server, there's still data that's stored on hardware, but it's remotely accessed, and it enables you to have a lot more flexibility. The third trend that we're seeing is people do not want to invest in what we call the old style of IT, which is a large ERP or an enterprise application that they buy and they own and they maintain. They now want to go to software as a service, or called SaaS, which is they want to pay for it as they use it, and they want it to be available when they need it. And this is a completely different licensing strategy. It's a completely different way to look at it. So your market, whether it's enterprise or consumer, has really altered, and it's hinging on those three components, and they really make up that new style of IT. Can I access it anywhere, anytime, and when I need it? Do I have any restrictions in getting to the information that I need? And are you charging me a large licensing fee, or are you charging me as I use it? So it's a pay-as-you-go model.
Wow, that's very interesting, especially the pay-as-you-go software. I had not heard of that, and I hadn't read about that yet, so that's very interesting to me. How do you see the trends impacting the decisions you make and what you do? And what emerging technologies do you think are likely to have a large impact on teaching, learning, or education?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that are really impacting us. So besides the technology trend, or maybe in partnership with that, you really have to think about your workforce, and being in HR, we consider our employees our human capital, how they interact, how they learn, how they engage, how they perform. We have to evaluate and style after that, because you're going to have the most success if you put it in a manner that they're going to find easy to do, that they're going to want to do. We've all had experiences having to do something that you just dread. You put it off, you delay it, it's usually last, and you don't put a lot of effort into it. So when you think about activities, whether it's managing salary structures, whether it's performance, whether it's succession planning, key attributes that come when you're managing human capital, you need to make sure that those processes and the enabling tools are simple and easy to use. And a good example is if you think about the transition that people maybe of my generation remember, when you went from bank tellers to ATMs. There was a real push going from that. But now you would find the majority of people prefer to use an ATM. They can get in, they can get out, they don't have to make small chat with anybody, they generally don't have to wait in a line. It's that same type of transition of going from having a hard check to direct deposit. But that's now accelerated. So when you think about that from a learning style, you have to think about your audience, and are you really catering to people who are still stuck in a teller mode? Are you catering to people who only communicate by text, who are used to social media and sharing everything with everyone on a very quick, rapid, immediate response, who don't expect delays in their engagements? So to give you an example, we have data and reports that are available to our managers based off programs that we run. So we have our focal point review, which includes our salary, stock, bonus administration on a yearly cycle. When those managers put them in, the next level manager wants to see it immediately, and you need to let that roll up multiple levels, and that the quicker you can make that data available, the more effective they're going to be able to adjust and course correct. At HP, we do that process in 8 days, which is quite considerable considering the population that we have. And the way that's enabled is we have software that presents it immediately. So if you take that into an educational format, when a student takes a test, how quickly do they get the results? How quickly can they go back, course correct, and why it's still fresh in their mind? Are they adjusting? Are they getting that test back the next day, the next week, the end of the semester? That type of rapid response, that immediate gratification, is something that the younger generation, the millennials, thrive on, and the next generation is going to push it even more. So when I think about how the technology comes into play, when we implement our human capital solutions, we're not implementing something that you get on the phone or you talk to someone or it takes days to do the updates. We've implemented what we call self-service, where you go in, you make the change, it's immediate, it's in the system, you see it, and you have that immediate recognition and immediate reward, if you will, to the action that you've done. And to support that, you have to think about what you're asking them to do and present it in a way that enables them to do it successfully, independently, and accurately. And to do that, one of the new technologies that we see that's emerging is what we call usability, or human factors engineer. So a way to think about that is if you think about any web page that you go shopping at, where is the shopping cart? It's always in the upper right corner.
Right.
Someone started that there, and now it's just known. And if someone tries to put the shopping cart in a different place, it doesn't make sense. We've now trained people that's there. If you go to Amazon, do you need to take a training manual to buy on Amazon? No. And you probably could list the top 5 websites that you love to go to and the 5 bad websites that you don't like to go to. And human factors engineers are all based off how do we get someone through the process you want them to go through it in the most intuitive, identifying way to them, not to how you want to present it. We're sometimes our own worst enemy and pushing it the way we think it should be, instead of turning around and taking on the voice or the perspective of the recipient.
Of the end user or the learner.
Exactly, and putting it in that style. And that might mean different things. That might mean multiple things.
So let me ask you, when you say that about putting it in that different style, when you look at technology, do you have different styles of learners or people that you're trying to address? So would you have different technology for different types of people?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So at Hewlett-Packard, we don't, because we're to scale and our operations need to be lean, and we need to be effective and efficient with them. So we try not to differentiate if we don't have to. But within that standardization breeds a level of comfort. Where you get a lot of churn is when you have differences for populations that you don't need differences for, just because someone wants to have it. So you need to standardize where you can. And that's a big push, that shopping cart up in the upper right corner. Now, from there, you need to interpret, are you selling clothes? Are you selling instruction? What is it that you're trying to get people to receive and basically ingest. Then you need to think about, okay, how is that most effective? So we do not have different processes based off of generations, right? Are you the teller person? Are you the ATM? Are you the online banking? We don't differentiate, but where we do differentiate is where we have a requirement. And that might be, legally or regulatory required. So in some of our countries, when you operate globally, there might be different legal requirements. Another thing you might take into consideration is culture.
Right.
If you try to take Japan culture and lay that on top of U.S. culture, you're going to have a lot of differences. And so you have to take into account what are those and how do you adjust the delivery to complement those cultures, but still base it on that standardization.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, just a couple more questions. What challenges are likely to have a huge impact on teaching or education over the next several years?
So I think that immediate gratification, that immediate connection, is going to show up. So one of the things that I already see impacting are books. By the time a book goes to print, it's out of date.
Right.
And you have all these version controls. So I think one of the emerging technologies is really online books. And when you have a book that's online and you have a device and you can connect to it and you can manage that, that gives you a different connection. It also means you can search and find things rather than reading through the book.
Right.
So it's going to alter your engagement. If you take that a step further, if you think about the readily accessible information that's out there, you don't have to go to an encyclopedia. I do not think my children know what the Dewey Decimal System is.
Right.
They know what Google is.
Right.
So there's different ways that you approach and you receive information. Now with that also comes some education and learning on what's true and what's not. Wikipedia
Sure.
is not a verified reference. It might have some great pointers on where to go. So when you think about that from an educational perspective, are you delivering information in that quick response that's now become the norm for the generation that's going to come up and start coming into the workforce and expanding? When you take that from another perspective, it really has impacted attention span. So if you
Yes.
think about it and you go back to maybe when we were in school, you might have these hour-long instructional videos. Those just don't work.
Right.
Those just don't work. If you Google something and you go out to YouTube and it shows you it's an hour-long instruction,
You're not
no one
watch
is watching it.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do at HP, when we have managers or employees and we need them to take an action, we do what we call vignettes or snippets of film or recordings that are no longer than 3 minutes. That's generally where we try to box it.
Okay.
And then they're topic focused. So they're broken down to the lowest level possible. They might be groups, so you might watch
3 or 4
series of them.
Right.
Exactly. But they come in, they're very specific, they're entertaining.
Right, they're engaging. They have something in there that
Exactly.
engages them.
They're going to catch your interest. They're not, someone droning on in a monotone, flipping slides. There's
Right.
a lot of technology that's out there that's bringing in drawn figures. We've all seen some of those commercials where the hand that draws the figures.
So
or you've
multimedia.
got stick figures. Exactly.
Right.
So it's almost, you've turned learning into entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
It's bite-sized. And the last part is it's just in time. Giving information ahead of when you need it. This is a little bit different in education, but if you think about it, you wouldn't give the information this week that you're going to test on in 4 months, right? It's generally building
Right. Mm-hmm.
until it goes over. So another big thing that we address within Hewlett-Packard is we don't do those, everybody goes through a training as a manager. Instead, we give you overview, and then as you have to hit specific actions, we're going to give you that information at the point in time that you need it.
So you individualize it.
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Okay, and technology allows you to do that.
Definitely.
Because if you're in a classroom and you're trying to do traditional teaching or traditional instruction, you have 30 people, everyone's got to follow along the same lesson. But if you have technology, you can individualize that. They can do that on their own.
You could allow them to go at different paces.
True.
Which, is one of the challenges that you have with a blended classroom where you
Right.
might have some who need a little bit more. And if you think about it in a technology perspective, if they had it and it was available and they could watch it and rewatch it, where the next person could go forward to the next one if
Right.
they had already gotten the concept. Now, you could get widely out of whack, but there's some ways that you could balance that and at least allow some of that reference material to be available at their point in time, whether that's 6 p.m. or 9 p.m. at night.
Right. What advice would you give to me as a professional who's going to be entering into technology education? And I know you work for a corporation, and I'm interested in also working for a corporation. So, what advice would you give me as I go into this field?
So I think the basics of technology will never fail you, understanding the basic pieces and parts that make it up. But I think there's an understanding that next year it'll be different. 3 years from now it'll be completely different. In 5 years it'll reinvent itself again. If you look at just the movement to the cloud and to SaaS, software as a service, that 5 years ago was just on the cusp. People were kind of thinking about it. It wasn't quite there. Within the next 5 years, ERP solutions, these large applications that you take on, you maintain, are going to go the way of the dinosaur. And it'll be through software as a service, cloud-based. If you think about just recently, I think Gwinnett County Schools has launched the Bring Your Own Device
Right.
initiative.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that even 3 years ago. Could you even imagine doing something like that? There's still hurdles to get over. But you think about the infrastructure that needs to go with it. Do you have the Wi-Fi and the bandwidth? Do you have controls over the applications and the users? Can you sustain that? And it's those type of challenges that you're going to be looking at. And then I think the other piece of that is to make sure you're staying relevant with your end user, whoever that might be, whether it's a consumer, whether it's a student, whether it's other faculty, but making sure you're keeping that voice or that perspective in your solution design. One thing we're definitely seeing in HP is we're not selling pieces and parts of hardware. What our customers want and what people want is a solution.
Right.
If you think about Apple, their products are neat and nifty, but the thing that made them the powerhouse they are is putting the hardware, the phone, the iPad, with iTunes, the software, and giving an integrated solution so that you could plug in, you could buy, it could download, and you had it all together. You didn't have to learn multiple pieces and plug it. And when you add that ease, you build a loyalty and an engagement. Now, it's a little more consumer focused, but if you think about that from an educational perspective, you've got what Apple did is they thought about their consumer and how do they get them over this hurdle. So if you think about it from the student's perspective and you think about your age group and what they're used to, what they're experiencing, how they communicate, teachers even sending emails now is getting a little bit old. You're texting
Right.
people, right? It's those type of progressions, staying with those, communicating those out to stay relevant to your end consumer.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kristine. I appreciate the interview.
You're welcome.
And I'm sure I'll be contacting you again for some more information. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.